Hi guys, this review is going to be done in two different parts, so we'll do about half of it in one video and half of it in the other video. We have 2 days worth of review and our test will be on Friday. So there's some words that you want to know about. It says a blank is a combination of terms, numbers, variables, and operations. So that would be the expression, okay? And you're going to have to match these words on the test, so you might want to make some flashcards or something about that, okay? The blank can be used to solve, let's make that a little smaller. The blank can be used to solve an equation if it states that the product of two factors is zero, and at least one factor must be. Okay, the blank, so the zero product property, okay, so you use that one. It states that the product of two factors is zero, then at least one factor must be, I guess, it states that if the two factors is zero, then at least one factor must be. I'm going to put a question mark there. And I know that on the test, you're not going to see that one. So that's kind of a goofy one. To blank an expression, rewrite it in simplest form, combine like terms, distribute, etc. To simplify. Okay. And blank contains two expressions that are equal to each other, an equation. To blank an expression, write the product as two multiples, then reverse the distribution. To blank an expression, write as the product of two multiples, and it's the reverse of distribution. So to factor, factor is opposite of distribution. And then to blank an equation, find the values for the variable that makes the equation true. So that's to solve. All right, so these don't have equal signs, so we're just factoring it. So take a look. What do you have in common between these two? Well, I have a 5, and if I factor a 5 out, factor a 5 out of 5x, I'm left with x. The minus sign comes along. If I factor 5 out of 30, 30 divided by 5 is 6. And this one, again, so we're going to look, remember we have x this many times, and we have y minus xx, and then y, 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 y. So what's the most number of x's from both I can factor out? It looks like 2 of them, so x squared comes out. What's the most y's I can factor out of both of them? And there's 2 of them, so that's y squared that comes out. What do I have left? Well, I have 1, 2, I have 3x to the third left, because x times x times x, and minus, because the minus sign, and y squared, because there's y left. Number 3, we're going to look, what do we have in common between these two? And I'd say a 3 can come out of both, because 3 goes into 12 and 3 goes into 15. And then I could take x to the third out. So if I take 3 out of 12, I'm left with 4, because 3 times 4 is 12. And if I factored x to the third from x to the fourth, there's a single x left, minus. If I factor a 3 out of 15, I'm left with 5. And all the x's come out, so it's factored. So this one we have to look what we have in common with all 3 terms. Okay, so we're looking for the greatest common factor. So I bet you a 5 goes into 10, and it goes into 15, it goes into 20. I can take out a single x because I only have a single x there. So I factor 5x out of 10x to the fourth. 5 goes into 10 twice, and then I have x to the third left over. Plus, factor 5 out of 15, there's a 3. I have x squared. If I factor an x out, I'm left with x. And if I factor a 5 out of 20, the minus sign comes along, I'm going to be left with a 4, and there's no x or anything. For problem number 5, I think 7 goes into both 21 and 14, and I can factor a maximum of x squared out, so 7x squared comes out. What do I have left? If I factor 7 out of 21, I'm left with 3. If I have x to the fifth, that means x, 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 x. If I factor 2 of them out, then I'm left with x to the third. minus sign comes along for the ride. Factored all the x's out of that, and if I factor a 7 out of 14, I'm left with 2. Number 6, it looks like I can factor a 5 out of everything, and I can factor a single a out, and I can factor a single b out. If I factor a 5ab out of 15, a to the third b, well, 5 times 3 is 15, and then I'm left with a squared minus, if I factor a 5 out of negative 20, 4 is left, and I can factor, the a comes out, and there's another b that's left. Number 7, these are already kind of, we've seen this many times. We have these things already broken up. So I have 2x minus 3 here. And then what do I have left? I have 5 plus 3x left. Same on this one. I can factor an x plus 5 out. So I'm left with the 4x plus, if nothing will factor out, there's really a 1 out front. All right. The next one is we're going to factor by grouping. So we have 4 terms. So we're going to look at our first 2 terms. It looks like I can factor a 4 out of everything and also an x squared. That's going to leave me 2x minus 5. Plus sign comes down. What can I factor out of 6x and 15? And there's 3 comes out, and that leaves me 2x minus 5. These are the same, so I have 2x minus 5. What do I have left? I have 4x squared plus 3. Number 10, I can look at my first 2 terms. I can factor a 3x out because 3 goes into 6 and goes into 3x. If I factor 3 out of 6, I'm left with 2, and there's an x minus 1. Plus sign comes down. What factors out between 14 and 7? Yeah, 7 would, so it leaves me 2x, and then you have to have that 1 as a placeholder. So then I have 2x minus 1 and 3x plus 7. Number 11, I have these 4 terms right here. So I'll look at the first 2. 7 goes into 49 and it goes into 14. And then I can factor an x out. That's going to leave me 7x minus 2. Plus sign comes down. What can I factor out of 42 and 12? 2 works, but what's bigger? Yeah, 6. 6 goes into 42 7 times. It has the x with it. The minus comes down. 6 goes into 12 twice. So then I'm left with 7x minus 2 and 7x plus 6, because those were the same. Number 12, I'm going to factor a 4 and an x squared out of both of those, because 4 goes in 8 and goes into 12. If I factor 4 out of 8, I'm left with 2, and there's an x still along. The plus sign comes down. If I factor a 4 out of 12, I'm left with 3, and all the x's are already out of it. Middle sign comes down. If I factor, what goes into 10 and 15? That'd be 5. So that's going to leave me 2x plus 3. So then I have 2x plus 3 and 4x squared plus 5. If you need any help with these, you're always welcome to ask me. So don't just think the video is the only thing there. So if you have a question, if I didn't clarify it in the video, please, come on up and talk to me, and I'm happy to help you. Number 13, we have these 4 terms. So let's see, what number goes into 16 and 28? 2 works. Is there anything bigger? Yeah, I think 4 works. So I factor a 4x out. If I factor a 4x out of 16x squared, I'm left with 4x. If I factor 4x out of 28, I'm left with plus 7. Plus sign comes down. If nothing factors out, you have to have a 1 as a placeholder. So I have 4x plus 7 and 4x plus 1. Number 14, what do I have in common between those? A 3 will come out. How many x's can I factor out? Yeah, I can factor 4 of them out, right? And so that's going to leave me an x minus 3 goes into 15 5 times, and all the x's are out. And then the plus sign comes down. I can factor a 5 out of both of those, and that's going to leave me this. These are the same, what you want. And then you get 3x to the 4th plus 5 as the other one. Okay. Number 15, again, we are not solving. we're just factoring. There's no equal sign. So remember, we talked about this word prime. So if it doesn't factor, we can go, you just write prime. So first one, it looks like we can do that quicker way because I have, there's basically a 1 out in front of there. So I put x and x. I know all my signs have to be positive because I only see positive signs. So what two numbers multiply to give me 24 and add to give me 10? Well, I have 1 and 24. Well, that doesn't add to 10. I have 2 and 12. They're both positive. That adds to 14. I have 4 and 6. Is 4 plus 6 10? It is. So just plug those directly in. Number 16, we can do it the quicker way. So I put x and x. Okay, I have a positive sign here. That means if I multiply two numbers together and get a positive, it's going to be the same sign. But notice I have a negative right there. So both of these signs have to be negative because negative times negative is a positive to give us that. Okay, so both of my signs are going to be negative. So we want the two numbers that we can multiply to get 14. So I got 1 and 14. And I also have 7 and 2. And if 7 and 2 are both negative, do they add up to negative 9? The answer is yes. So just plug them directly in, so it's factored. Number 17, we could do it our quick way because we have x and x. Okay, notice we have a negative here, so I'm going to have alternating signs because if I multiply two numbers together and get a negative, one of them has to be negative. Okay, so let's see. If I use 1 and 10, is there some way I could have one being positive, one being negative to add up to 9? The answer is yes. So I'm going to have a positive 10 and a negative 1. So positive 10, negative 1 plugs in, it's factored. Number 18, again, we could do it our fast way because we have x squared out front. So I have x and x. We have a negative here, so if we multiply two numbers together to get a negative, we need to have a positive and negative. So what two numbers multiply to give me 15 and add to give me 2? Well, I think the 3 and the 5 are going to work, so I'm going to have a plus 5 and a minus 3. Okay, so plus 5 minus 3, plus 5 minus 3. Done. And let's keep going through the factoring. Okay, there's two terms. That's perfect square, right? I'll put PS for perfect square because x times x is x squared. So x squared is a perfect square. 36 is a perfect square as well because 6 times 6. Is this a subtraction sign? No, this won't factor. We just write prime. If I had this, this does factor to become like this, but I have a minus sign there. This is a plus sign, so that plus sign means that it won't factor, so be cautious on that. Number 20, we have to do it the old way. So I'm going to multiply those together. So I get 15 times 2, which is positive 30. I have all positive signs, so both signs have to be positive. What times what gives me 30 and also gives me 11 when I add it together? Well, I know 1 and 30, that gives me 31. That's not going to work. 2 and 15, that is going to give me 17, so that's not quite there. What about 3 and 10? 3 and 10 added together gives me 13. 4 doesn't work. What about 5 and 6? Do 5 and 6 add to 11? Yes. All signs are positive, so I'm going to plug in plus 5x plus 6x. I'm going to replace the 11x with 5x and 6x, whatever order I want, but just make sure you bring the signs with it. So plus 5x plus 6x plus 15. I can factor an x out of both of those, and that's going to leave me 2x plus 5. The middle plus comes down. If I factor a 3 out of both of those, because 3 goes into 6 and 3 goes into 15, that's going to leave me 2x plus 5. These are the same. That's what you want. That's going to be the first set of parentheses. And then x plus 3 is the other one, because that's what we have left. Just know this. If you had flip-flopped 6 and 5, if you had 6x right here and 5x right here, the answer would come out to this, and this is the exact same answers, just flip-flopped, okay? So just know that if you worked it out and you had gotten the answer backwards, that's okay. Watch your signs, though, and those are all positive. All right, this one we have to do the longer way. So that's going to give me negative 40. In order to multiply two numbers together to get a negative number, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So we want to figure out what two numbers multiply to give me 40, but add to give me -3. Well, 1 and 40, that's not going to work because that's further than 3 apart. 2 and 20 won't work because we're trying to get to that 3. 4 and 10, that's getting closer. Not quite there, though. Anything else that multiplies together to give me 40? Did you think about 5 and 8? Cool. 5 and 8 are 3 apart from each other, so I'm going to use a -8x and a plus 5x. Okay, if I add those together, I get that -3. So bring down the ends, 10x squared minus 8x plus 5x minus 4. Look at your first two terms, and it looks like I can factor a 2 and an x out of both of those, and that's going to leave me 5x minus 4. Middle sign comes down. I can't factor anything out, so I need a 1 as a placeholder. So I'm going to get 5x minus 4 and 2x plus 1. There's our answer. Number 22. These are both perfect squares because 3 times 3 is 9, right? And x times x is x squared. So that's a perfect square. This is a perfect square because 4 times 4 is 16. There's a minus sign. That means that we can indeed do this. So you're going to write 2 sets of parentheses. So 3x times 3x is 9x squared. 4 times 4 is 16. And remember, you have to have a positive and a negative in this case. If there's two terms, they're perfect. Difference of two squares, meaning you have a subtraction sign between two perfect squares, you have to have alternating signs. So positive and negative, or negative and positive. Number 23, we have to do the longer way. So that's going to give me -24. Remember, when I multiply two numbers together and I get a negative number, one's positive, one's negative. Okay, so I want to figure out what I can multiply together to give me -24 and add to give me -5. So 1 and 24, that's not going to work. 2 and 12, that's not going to work. 3 and 8, I think we can stop there. Aren't these 5 apart from each other? That works. So watch your negatives. So it's going to be a -8x plus 3x. If I combine those together, I'm going to get -5. So now I'm going to have 2x squared minus 8x plus 3x minus 12. I can factor a 2x out of both of those. So that's going to leave me x minus 4. Middle sign comes down. I can factor a 3 out of both of those. That's going to give me x minus 4. These are the same, so that's what we want. There's our answer. Okay, so let's see. Old way, I'm going to multiply 15 times 8. So I get a negative answer. So what's 15 times 8? I'm just do it right here. I don't have a calculator with me. 8 times 5 is 40. Carry the 4. That's 120. So -120. Okay, in order to get a negative number one multiplying, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. We want to figure out which of those two numbers would multiply together to give me -120 and add to give me -14. So I have 1 and 120. That's not going to work. 2 and 60 is not going to work. 3 and 40 isn't going to work. 4 and 30 won't work. Let's see, 5 and 24. It's getting closer. 6 and 20. 6 times 20 is, wait, that might work. So I think I'm going to have a -20x and a positive 6x that I'm going to replace with the -14. So I'm going to have 8x squared minus 20x plus 6x minus 15. I'm going to factor a 4 out of both of those and an x. And that leaves me 2x minus 5. Middle sign comes down. I can factor a 3 out of both of those, and that's going to give me 2x minus 5. So those are the same. There you go. Okay, so those were factors. Why were we only factoring them? There wasn't an equal sign. Okay, so I think we can keep going. I'm just going to finish up the rest of these. Is that okay? So now it's the zero product property. These are equal to zero. So that means I have to take it, I have to factor it first, and then set those factors equal to zero and solve. Remember that? It's the new stuff. Okay, so this looks like it might be one of the fast ways to factor it. So I have x and x. I have a negative 32. So what I have two numbers multiplied together to give me negative 32. So one's positive, one's negative. So negative 32. So let's think about it. Would 1 and 32 add up to 4? No. Would 2 and 16? No. 3 doesn't work. 4 times 8, that's 32. Which one has to be positive? Yeah, the 8 has to be positive. The 4 has to be negative. Okay, and so it's equal to 0. So now we have to go one step beyond. So x plus 8 equals 0. X minus 4 equals 0. So each part equal to 0. Subtract 8 from both sides. So I get negative 8 for one answer. And add 4 to both sides. So I get positive 4 for the other answer. 26. The only thing I can factor out is an x. So I have x plus 6 equals 0. All right, so set each part equal to 0. So this one's already done. And then subtract 6 from both sides. That's what we got. And we're just going to make this all one video if that's okay. We only have 8 more problems to go. All right, problem number 27. We can factor it the faster way because I get x and x. What two numbers multiply together to give me a positive 48? So I have to have the same sign. Are they both positive or are they both negative? They're both negative because I have a negative right there, okay? So I'm going to have negative, negative. So I want to figure out, let's see, well, 1 times 48 gives me 48. Will that give me 14? No. What about 2 and 24? Will that give me 14 if I add them together? No. Let's see, 3 and 16. If I add those together, would I get negative 14? No. What about 4 times 12? It's getting closer, but it's not quite there. 5 doesn't work. What about 6 and 8? If those are both negative, would they add up to negative 14? Yes. So I have negative x minus 6, x minus 8. But remember, it's equal to 0. Remember the equal sign. So I'm going to go x minus 6 equals 0. Add 6 to both sides. There's one answer. X minus 8 equals 0. Add 8 to both sides. There's my other answer. Number 28. Is this a perfect square? Yes, because x times x is x squared. Is 36 a perfect square? Yes, because 6 times 6. Is there a minus sign? Yes, so it's going to factor. Okay, so I'm going to put an x here, x here. Remember, when you have this minus sign, you have to have alternating signs. And then we said 6 times 6 is 36. Cool. We're going to set those equal to 0 and solve them. Subtract 6 from both sides. And this one, we're going to set it equal to 0. We're going to add 6 to both sides. So we get positive 6 and negative 6 for an answer. Number 29, we have to factor it the longer way because we don't have a 1 in front of the x squared. So I'm going to multiply those together. So I get positive 21. Okay. Looks like it's going to be positive and positive because I don't see any negatives. Agree? All right. So I want to figure out what two numbers multiply together to give me positive 21, add together to give me 22. And I think 1 and 21, if we add those together, 1 times 21 is 21. 1 plus 21 is 22. So they both have to be positive. And we're going to replace the 22 with that. So I get 3x squared plus 1x plus 21x plus 7. I have an x in common between those two. Plus sign comes down. I can factor 7 out of both of those. So I get 3x plus 1 and x plus 7. But wait, it's equal to 0, so I have to set each of those equal to 0 to solve it. So on this one, I'm going to subtract 1 and then divide by 3. So I get negative 1/3 for one answer. I'm going to subtract 7 on this one. For problem number 30, we have to do it the old way. We'll multiply those together. So negative 21 times 5 is negative 105. In order to get a negative, I have to have a positive and a negative. And I want to figure out what two numbers multiply together to give me negative 105, add together to give me negative 8. All right, so we want to figure out what two numbers multiply to give me negative 105 and add to give me negative 8. So 1 and 105. And let's see, 105 divided by 3 is 35. So I have 3 and 35 up there. 105 divided by 5, because 5 goes into it. So I get 5 and 21. We're getting a little closer. Let's see. 105 divided by 6 doesn't work. 105 divided by 7 doesn't work. Oh, 7 and 15. 7 and 15. Oh, wait. Those are all 8 apart. So I'm going to plug in negative 15x plus 7x. So that's going to give me negative 8 when I combine them together. So I'll replace that. So I get 5x squared minus 15x plus 7x minus 21 equals 0. Okay, so I'm going to factor a 5x out of both of those. That's going to leave me x minus 3. Middle sign comes down. Factor 7 out. And then I'm going to get x minus 3 and 5x plus 7. Set those equal to 0. So x minus 3 equals 0. So add 3 to both sides. There's one answer. And I get 5x plus 7 equals 0. So subtract 7 from both sides and then divide by the 5 out front. There you go. There's my two answers. Number 31. Hey, that's a perfect square. And that's a perfect square. But I have an addition sign in between them. So what do we do? This is prime. It will not factor. If that was a subtraction sign, if we had this for our problem, it would have worked because we would have gotten 2x plus 3 and 2x minus 3, and then you'd continue. But we didn't have that. So because that plus sign is prime, it won't work out. All right, number 32. Let's see. I'm going to multiply those together. That's going to give me positive 36. And everything's positive, no negative signs. So I have 1 and 36. That doesn't add to 12. 2 and 18. That doesn't add to 12. 3 and 12. That doesn't add to 12. 4 and 9. That adds to 13. So we're getting closer. And 6 and 6. Oh, 6 and 6. If they're both positive, that's going to work. So I'm going to replace that. So I get 4x squared plus 6x plus 6x plus 9. I can factor a 2 and an x out of both of those. That's going to leave me 2x plus 3. Middle sign comes down. I can factor a 3 out of both of those. So my answer is going to be 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 3. But it's equal, so we have to set those equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides and divide by 2. There's one answer. Subtract 3 from both sides and divide by 2. So I get two answers that are the exact same, and that's okay. Last two questions. And again, if you have questions about this is a 2-day review, so you can ask me, and I'm happy to help you. Okay? All right, so here I'm going to multiply those two together, and that's going to give me negative 40. In order to get a negative number when multiplying two numbers together, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So I want the factors of negative 40 that would add to negative 39. So I think 1 and 40 are going to work. So if I had a negative 40x plus 1x, if I combine those together, I get that negative 39. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So let's plug it in. So I get 5x squared minus 40x plus 1x minus 8. I'm going to factor a 5 out of both of those and an x. So that's going to leave me x minus 8. Middle sign comes down. Nothing factors out, so you have a 1 as a placeholder. So x minus 8 and 5x plus 1. But it's equal to 0, so I'm going to set each of those equal to 0 and solve. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides here. And then I'm going to subtract 1 and divide by 5. Here's my other answer. Last one. And you know, just know your test is not going to be this long. So this is just a good amount of review. So let's multiply negative 15 times 2. So I'm going to get negative 30. In order to get a negative number, when multiplying two numbers together, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So 1 and 30, we're trying to get to negative 1, right? That's not going to work. 2 and 15 doesn't work. 3 and 10 doesn't work. What about 5 and 6? Yeah, 5 and 6, I think are going to work. So I'm going to get negative 6x plus 5x. I'm going to replace that with where the negative 1x is. So I'm going to get 2x squared minus 6x plus 5x minus 15. Factor out a 2 and an x on both of those. That's going to give me that. Middle sign's going to come down. Factor out a 5. That's going to give me x minus 3. So I have x minus 3 and 2x plus 5. Set those equal to 0. So x minus 3 equals 0, and 2x plus 5 equals 0. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And the other one, I'm going to subtract 5 and divide by 2. Okay, so that is all of your review. You have Wednesday and Thursday to work on it, and then we will have our test on Friday. Okay, I want you to take your time on your test, go through and do the problems that you know how to do those first, and then go back and do the tougher ones. If you need more time, that's okay. Just let me know, and I'm happy to give you more time on Monday. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.